wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
Welcome and welcome. It's the Talk to Solomon show. That's me, Stan Solomon, my co-host.
Chief Steve.
And my other co-host. That's your cue, Brent.
That was me, Brent Johnson.
Okay,
Hey there.
thank you very much. We had one guy fell asleep here. Sorry about that. Our guest this evening is well, I'm trying to think of a fancy word, but here's the best word. All-around smart guy, Dr. Alan Keyes. Alan, how are you tonight?
I'm doing okay, Stan. How are you?
I am fine. I'm glad to see you're dressed casually because I'm dressed casually, and you've been making me look bad for some time now.
Well, we've been having some pretty hot weather here, so.
Yeah, you got that right. I talked to a young lady, Allison Wiley, in the last half hour. We talked to her. She's a wonderful lady who's gone through hell, has come out by the grace of God in a position to stand up for God and to stand up for every child being a child of God, and at the worst possible place in the world, that's the United Nations. But at any rate, I told her a story, and I want to repeat it and get your comment. You probably saw it. A fella by the name of, I think his first name is Robert, his last name is Saint Bernard. He drives a bus. He's 52. He has 4 kids. He doesn't have a lot of money. They live in an apartment. They live in Queens. He had just come home from work. He was tired. He looked up as he was parking his car and saw a child, a 7-year-old child, dancing on an air conditioner that was 3 stories up, outside a window. He rushed over. The child he knew, an autistic child, a little girl. She had no idea that there was danger. She thought she could fly. She, in fact, tried. She jumped. He caught her by the grace of God. She didn't get a scratch. He ripped his muscle in his arm, but he's happy as he can be. And this child's mother said he was her little girl's guardian angel. Chief Steve and I were talking about God has a plan for us all. When this man was a child, his name was to be Saint Bernard. Maybe God meant for that saint to be there 52 years later, at that moment, at that time, to save one of God's little angels. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that the providence of God is one of those things that sometimes these days people want to belittle it and act as if we shouldn't recognize it, that we live in a world, they claim, without the miraculous. But I think that understanding who God is and understanding that in his being he transcends time and place, he is in the future as he is in the past and the present, and therefore he can make all the due preparations that his benevolent will lays out if we are, I think, willing to have confidence and put our faith in him. And sometimes even when we are not thinking of ourselves, he is thinking of us. And I think that that's one of the vital concepts on the basis of which we understand why it is so important that we acknowledge who God is, because it helps us to retain that confidence, which I think we have once we remember that he is the superintendent intelligence of the universe and is making this kind of provision in his way and time. So that things can turn out right, so that all things will go as they appropriately should. And it's always struck me, Stan, though people again want to forget it sometimes, in the vocation that I chose, being involved in politics and government and things of this kind, that this country was founded by people who, in the founding document, put their trust in God's divine providence, even when all the odds were against them, as they declared the independence of the United States. It's one of those reasons I wish people would actually, on July the 4th, do what the founders wanted us to do, which is commemorate the Declaration and carefully think about what those words implied in terms of the faith and confidence and trust that is the foundation stone of America's identity.
Brent, your thoughts?
I think I think that it is harder to believe that that incident was just a matter of luck and coincidence and the right people being in the right place at the right time. That is more difficult to believe than there is a just God in heaven who looks over all of us. I think that that is just an absolutely wonderful story, which, by the way, I had not heard about until you mentioned it, Stan. And it's just, it reaffirms that which I already am 100% certain of, and that is that there is a creator up there who looks out over us.
Now, sadly, Brent, if I may say so, you mentioned luck. And I think you said very true words about how hard it is to believe that conjuncture of circumstances just sort of happened by accident. But sadly, you do realize that we live in a world now in which the most complex of all possibilities, which is summarized in point of fact in any of the simplest living organisms, they believe that it came about by chance, even though these days when you sit down and figure out scientifically the probabilities of that, the truth of the matter is there is not world enough or time for that to have come about by chance, given what we now know about the complexity of what we used to think was the simple single cell organism. Not even to mention an organism like ours, like the human being in its tremendous complexity. But, you know, there are people who think that it's crazier to believe in God than it is to believe that such things happened by chance.
And they all happen to be Democrats.
And therein lies the definition, the meaning of the term faith. There are people who don't know how to have faith, and therefore they cannot believe in God.
Well, they must not believe in God because otherwise they can't justify a big part of their existence. Chief, your thoughts?
Well, I don't believe there's any such thing as a coincidence. I believe these things are all meant to be and transpire. But in today's society where the left is desperately trying to get our young adults, our young children to worship rap stars and pop stars and singers and NBA stars and NFL stars, in reality, the stars that we should be paying attention to, not worshiping but really respecting, are our military heroes that risk life and limb, and the next door neighbor who risked life and limb to save a little girl, and just by coincidence, it doesn't really happen, there aren't any, his name is St. Bernard.
Gotta be. All right, let's talk about a coincidence. The United Nations, may they rest in pieces, is trying to promote, and let me say this right, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. A mouthful. And what? Let me summarize it, and then I'll ask Dr. Keyes to be more eloquent. The right of disabled people to be offed, and everyone else to feel good about it. Dr. Keyes.
Well, Stan, I think I'm smiling because the degree of absurdity that is now prevalent in the things being considered in our time and in our world is such that it's hard to exaggerate the madness that is gripping people. It is literally the case that we are taking words like compassion and understanding and watching them as they are abused in concrete form, so that you come up with proposals like this in which it is a mercy to suggest that you ought to arrange the world in such a way that there will be no obstacle to making sure that people will so disregard the precious gift of life and so little value it because of their disability that you must leave the path open so that they'll shuffle off this mortal coil at their own behest and things of that kind. I think it's all one of those symptoms of what happens when you lose your anchor. Because we are living in a world where though people use words like rights and compassion and justice, they have abandoned the anchor of truth that gives those words their substance and that therefore allows us to recognize the bounds and boundaries that we must respect. Beginning, of course, with the notion that every life, every human life, is a word fitly spoken by the Lord God and intended for his purpose. And just as we were talking a minute ago about the man who was there to save the child falling from the window, I think that whatever it is we think we are in terms of our deficiencies and problems and disabilities, yet something that develops in us as a result of the way that we are willing to respond to God's will in us, can, I think, provide others, not only with inspiration and truth, but with rescue and salvation, sometimes of things, spiritual aspects of their lives that are far more lasting and permanent, in my view, than just physical survival. And yet that understanding, which I think accepts the mystery of God's purpose for each and every person, is not being just thrown aside as we allow people to come forward making proposals that suggest that because we have scratched the little surface of some understanding of the world and of ourselves, we can yet act as if all the depths and mysteries are done, and we can easily disregard the truth that in each life there is an unfathomable presence that we need to respect rather than disregard.
Brent?
I've done a fair amount of study on the United Nations, and if you were to pull up, say, the United Nations Declaration of Rights and look through paragraph after paragraph, there is a clause that the UN inserts in every single right that it declares. And while I haven't seen this brand new one, I have no doubt that it's there. A right, by definition, is a gift of God. That's what a right is intended to be. You have a right to life, you have a right to liberty, not because some government or NGO gave it to you, but because you are a child of God. UN rights are always subject to the needs of international security. This is a clause, and you will find it in there every single time. Rights of the child, rights of freedom of religion, rights of freedom of speech, rights of ad infinitum. Everyone has this clause. The needs of international security, at which point I have to ask, as determined by whom? And this is the catch. What we have, Alan is very right, very correct. What we have is we have words that have been bastardized. Words like rights and phrases like Bill of Rights. Today you hear taxpayer Bill of Rights and airline passengers Bill of Rights and yada, 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 fill in the blank Bill of Rights. Rights are a gift of God. To use the term to further socialist or communist propaganda is, in my opinion, blasphemous and an abomination. The UN Declaration of Rights on the Disabilities or anything else is nothing more than a socialist scam designed to give an unelected body control, in this case, over your children. By the way, and that's what it is. It actually gives control over decisions affecting your children to you, to the UN rather than to you, the parents. Yeah, you might say, hey, how does it do that? Go and read some of the legislation that the UN proposes, and you'll see.
Well said. Chief?
Just to add this, the formula is to devalue human life. Once an organization like the UN or a communist nation or the Democrat Party or whoever devalues life, then when a human being no longer produces what they want, they can discard them easily, and that's what they intend to do.
Or takes more of what they want to give them. Now, let's switch to another UN treaty, and it's the Lost Treaty. The Law of the Sea Treaty has now been officially announced dead on arrival. 34 Republicans have gone on record saying, no way, Jose. Alan, talk to us about that misguided giving up of the autonomy and the security of this and every other nation to the same body of whatever you want to call them.
Well, Stan, I think one of the most important aspects of this Lost Treaty is the fact that it represents a direct assault on the sovereignty of the United States. And you are essentially not only talking about sovereignty in the sense of our physical and geographic sovereignty and the freedom that we must and should have to conduct our trade and self-defense activities on the seas. You're talking about the fact that this whole idea that somehow or another everything that's involved with the oceans has to do with a commons, right? That belongs, as it were, to the world to be administered by this global entity that has been put together under the treaty. And so if you want to go out and have to do with the resources that are in that commons, you are then going to be taxed. You're going to have to pay for that privilege to a governing entity that in no way reflects the real principles of representation and election and justice and constitutional limitation, but that is basically going to be a body that can extort a certain value from all the folks who use the oceans in order to follow the dictates of whatever socialist bureaucrats happen to dominate the UN at the time. And I think it's no coincidence that this treaty, which exemplifies this notion that somehow or another the collective and the government that purports to speak for it is actually the owner of real property. That is exactly the notion that was then articulated, I think you noticed that, Stan, by Barack Obama in the course of this week, in which he was claiming that when people have business success, they shouldn't be of the view that they made this business and they made it happen. No, because at the end of the day, without the government and the infrastructure and the this and the that government provides, they couldn't get anywhere, and therefore their success is a function of that collective instrument. It's fascinating to me that they have basically taken the idea of government as an instrument of security for individual rights and individual capacities and opportunities and prospects, and kind of stood it on its head, so that instead of the people consisting of those God-endowed individuals using government as an instrument, people become the instrument of the collective by way of government. And I think it's exactly that mentality that is embodied in the Law of the Sea Treaty. The individuals involved in the first instance are nations like the United States, but ceding their sovereignty in this way that implies the subjection of all the individuals who are part of those nations to this global and totalitarian-minded collective agency that will then represent, as it were, the will, the abstract will of this commons to which all the world belongs. So I think it is really, Stan, the fulfillment of the socialist totalitarian script. And the beauty of it is, first, that Ronald Reagan knew this, rejected it, and that rejection stood the test of time, in spite of the fact, by the way, that during the Bush years, we had the administration trying to push for it. And I noticed today you have figures on the one side, Rumsfeld, on the other, I think it was John Negroponte, who was arguing for the lost treaty, trying to say that this is going to be vital to the future interests of America, and so forth and so on. Right now, the vote that was taken, I think, reflects the residual momentum of that understanding that has prevailed since Reagan's time. But I got to say, Stan, I hope people aren't, I saw a headline that said, lost treaty is dead. Don't believe it. Don't believe it, because unhappily, this thing's going to hang about, and my guess is, I know people will say, oh, Alan, you keep beating this horse, but I sure do. All these people who think that we'll get rid of Barack Obama and then everything will be wonderful with Barack, it makes me laugh, because the treaty that is defeated out of fear, I think, of the election that's right around the corner right now, I wouldn't be at all surprised if during a so-called Romney era, it is revived and passed, because it will then have the imprimatur of some of these lost rhino-type so-called Republicans.
Well, your point is well made, because the lost treaty was backed by the American oil industry. And one might wonder, why? Why would American companies.
I can answer that.
Bracket. Go ahead, Brent. Give your answer.
Yeah, I can answer that. The main proponent of the Lost Treaty, the Law of the Sea Treaty in the Senate is John Kerry, the man who would be president once. And John Kerry has said, hey, this isn't done yet. Doesn't matter that you got 34. As a treaty, in order to be ratified, it needs 2/3 of the Senate, meaning it needs 67 senators to vote in favor of it. If there are 100 senators, you got 34 who won't. That theoretically kills it. But Kerry has said he does not intend to bring the vote to the floor until after the elections, until after he sees how the political winds settle. The problem you have is that the people who are moving for this, who are promoting it as benefiting America, are doing so because the Lost Treaty, if America is not a signatory to it, precludes the United States from having access to certain seas for the purpose of making profit for the oil companies. Profit being the value that drives the proponents. America will be better off because America will make more money. That's what the argument is. Now, we, Alan, myself, you, Stan, Chief Steve, we're talking about our sovereignty, how it will compromise our ability to be independent and free. So our values on which we base our opposition are freedom. The values on which the proponents base their support are profit. This is why the two will not meet. We're talking freedom, they're talking profit, we're talking independence, they're talking money. One other point, and that is that no treaty, and a lot of people don't understand this, no treaty, ratified or not, can change the Constitution. Only a constitutional amendment, or in the case of this first 7 articles in the preamble and the organic 10 amendments, a constitutional convention, an Article 5 convention. Only that could change the Constitution. As an example, there's another UN treaty, the Small Arms Treaty. Everybody's up, every freedom lover is up in arms about it because it will change the Second Amendment. No, it will not. You cannot lawfully change the Second Amendment to the Constitution without a constitutional amendment doing so. To wit, the Volstead Amendment, prohibition, the 18th Amendment was changed by the 22nd Amendment. So while it's true that a treaty does become part of the Constitution, it cannot change that which already exists in the Constitution.
Go ahead, Alan.
Well, I want to say to Red, I agree with what you're saying. So what I'm about to say is not by way of disagreeing with anything you said. I think that's the right understanding of the constitutional situation. However, I don't think you can rely on what shall we say, the courts and others in this society right now to take that view. Because the actual words of the Constitution...
They're a bunch of thugs.
Well, I know, but the actual words of the Constitution, and it's worried me since since I first started seriously thinking about the Constitution, those words, this Constitution and all treaties made pursuant thereunto shall be the supreme law of the land, have worried me. Because when you read them through, they do bear the possible interpretation that that which is accepted in a treaty then becomes the supreme law of the land, and it is the only thing that could be interpreted as an exception to the proper procedure for ratifying the Constitution with the consent of the people themselves. And I think that I wouldn't want people to rest easy, though, Brett, because even though what you have said is true, we'd have to fight for that truth. And given what the Supreme Court has been doing lately, as I think you've noticed, I don't think we could rely on an understanding of the Constitution in this regard that showed any respect for the real requirements of its integrity as a constraining instrument of government. I think just the opposite. If you have a court that is willing, as they just did, to essentially tell us that the taxing power is free of all constitutional constraints, without any warrant, by the way, in the words of the Constitution, if they have this kind of a warrant that treaties might just be free in that sense, you don't really think they're not going to jump at it, do you? Because I think they will. Because I think there is a settled will in the elite now in this society to overthrow the Constitution, to throw it out, to get rid of it, to cast its cords from them, so that it no longer binds them.
And Alan, I completely agree with you, because even though what I said is true, it's always important people remember the people administering the laws in the United States and the people adjudicating disputes in the laws in the United States are themselves lawless. They're a bunch of criminal thugs operating outside of the supreme law of the land, and therefore nothing is to be trusted within their hands. I agree with you.
On that light note, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with Dr. Alan Keyes, Brent Johnson, Chief Steve Davis, and you, of course, our viewers. Thanks. Stay tuned. Hey folks, this is Stan Solomon, and I talk to smart people all the time. I've got one of the smartest people around on how to make money from home. His name is Ted Williams, and Ted, well, it's a tough economy out there.
It is, but if you've got the right vehicle and some good advice, you can make it even in this economy.
All right. Well, how can you make money in this economy if you don't have money already?
Well, I tell people right now that in this economy there are really two businesses that I would say work good times, bad times. And the first one costs several $1 million to get involved in, and that's necessity food. You know, you go to the grocery store, people are going to eat. It doesn't matter. We're gonna do that. But can you imagine or think for a minute, what is the other business that everybody's involved in?
Well, let me think for just a minute. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody lives based on a cell phone. In fact, I don't know anyone that doesn't have one, but cell phone business is expensive to get into.
Well, it is if you're buying a brick and mortar store and you want to tie yourself to a conventional business, have inventory, overhead, theft, all the stuff that goes with it, and then you have an opportunity with our business opportunity to for under $300 to be able to operate in 50 states and all the U.S. territories and soon to be international.
Now, wait a minute. Is this one of those deals where you can only talk between 8:15 and 8:22 at night on Tuesdays?
No, this is actually running on one of the nation's largest nationwide networks, and we even have roaming for those people that are traveling between major highways, and we have the top-of-the-line phones. We've got some of the best Android phones, the newest Android phones that have come out on the market, as well as some simple flip phones for people that's all they want to do is talk.
Now, how does the fee for this service compare with the major companies?
Well, right now, if you get all of the service and you use a lot of internet or a lot of data, you can easily spend $150 a month. In fact, some of the companies that are advertising unlimited data are actually giving you unlimited data, but the first gig is high speed, then they slow it down to 56K. You can't even use it. It's unlimited, but you can't use it. With ours, it's truly unlimited talk, text, and web, and the great thing with us, you can develop a business and earn free service for the rest of your life.
Can you earn more than free service? That saves you $100, $150 a month, but that's only the start, right?
Obviously. There's a lot of income opportunity if you want to treat it as a real business. And you know, at under $300 to get started, we have a fast start program for our representatives where they can recoup their investment in their first month if they just are serious. We also have a unique feature. Knowing what we're talking about, if you had a friend and you're not a representative, but you are earning free cell phone service, wouldn't you tell your friends about it?
Especially if it would help me to keep that free service.
Well, what we have is a program where you can refer a few friends, even if you're not a representative. You could be a customer, and you refer a few friends or family members that get our service. That would earn you free service. So our representatives can get it as well as our customers.
So you're saying with a national competitive company, you have the ability to give unlimited, true unlimited service with the latest and greatest phones or less, if that's what you want, and that not only can you have free service, but all your customers can have free service by referring people. And I assume if they're your customers, then you make some override, right?
Absolutely. You can actually have a network of representatives that you're earning overrides on, as well as their customers, and you benefiting financially from that. So it's big money at a low cost and low investment, and all the tax advantages of being self-employed and write your own schedule.
This is not a brand new company that just trying this out. This is a proven, publicly traded, high-quality company?
Yeah, they've been in the telecom industry for over 18 years. And, you know, just having money will not get you in the wholesale cell phone game. There's 3 or 4 companies that dominate, and they won't give up any of their share with someone with no experience. Our company has been involved in data billing, customer service in the telecom industry for years and years, and we were the first in the market at the wholesale level.
Folks, this is an exciting opportunity, maybe for you. We can't tell you what's right or wrong. There's a phone number you can call, 800-299-8362, or you can go to cpnlive.com and click on the icon that says Make Money from Home, and all the information will be there. Ted, thanks so much.
Thank you.